There's an old saying that if you don't know your history, you are bound to repeat its mistakes. And as a historian, I thoroughly believe that we do need to know about our past. It helps us to understand where we've come from, where we are at present, and therefore, even in the most uncertain of times, to chart a map that'll help to take us into the future. And last year, 2019, was a very significant year in the history of the Moneyreagh congregation because it celebrated its 300th anniversary. And not only that, it celebrated the 10th anniversary of the commencement of the ministry there of Reverend Chris Wilson. And so minister and committee and session were all kept very busy working to make sure that the celebrations were as memorable as possible. And one of the decisions taken at that time by the leaders of the congregation was to reissue the history of Moneyreagh congregation that had first appeared at the time of the 250th anniversary. And if you're interested in knowing about the history of Moneyreagh congregation, this book will help you to find out about it. And a lot of the detail of the history is contained in that. In 1719, we understand that a grant of land was made in the Moneyreagh area, and the first meeting house was built that year. And of course, this is a time of great controversy. The first subscription controversy is just building up a head of steam and about to erupt. But 1719 is a significant year for another reason in Presbyterianism, because this year the Irish Toleration Act was passed. And this meant for the first time that Presbyterianism was actually legal. It was legal to practice Presbyterianism. Of course, there were congregations established before that, and in the previous 30 years there had been gradual informal concessions to Presbyterianism, which had become increasingly organised and increasingly assured. But it may be with this new legality that it was keen, the Presbyterians were keen to show that they were orthodox, and this may also have lent steam to the subscription controversy. And one person who was embroiled in this controversy was the Reverend Thomas Nevin of Downpatrick, and following a visit to Moneyreagh during these tumultuous years, he was accused of, but subsequently acquitted of heresy. And perhaps he was a supply preacher who was going to Moneyreagh, because it took some years, it was 6 or 7 years, before a minister was actually appointed to the congregation in those early days. But nonetheless, the congregation was growing in security and was being established. Now, Nevin, this person who was accused of heresy, was a member of the Belfast Club. And the Belfast Club, of course, had been started by John Abernethy. Now, there are differing opinions around the theology of John Abernethy. Some people stress the fact that he was absolutely orthodox, but we must remember not to be absolutely orthodox at that time ran a risk of being accused of heresy. And so different people take different views of what he believed. Abernethy certainly emphasised the primacy of Scripture. And he was a keen evangelist. He was very keen that his ideas should be spread. He spoke Irish and he went to preach in Irish-speaking areas. He emphasises in his published works the oneness of God, but that of itself is not heretical. We know that in his diary he must have recorded some pretty amazing things. There's a record of this, but unfortunately the diary itself doesn't survive. But in Abernethy's published works, he emphasises what we now would call the intelligent design principle, the meaning and purpose behind everything. And in a denomination that's very diverse and has many different ideas, one of the interesting challenges is, how do you have cogency? If you emphasise personal judgment, how do you have cogency? And really, Abernethy's theology, the theology that he began to express and write about and speak about at that time, gives the underlying cogency to non-subscription. That is certainly my opinion and my approach to non-subscription. And so next time, when we look at the ideas of the non-subscribers, we're going to jump forward to Fletcher Blakely, who was born in the 1780s and who became minister in Moneyreagh in 1809, just at the time when the congregation was moving towards celebrating its first centenary. And Fletcher Blakely had some very interesting ideas.